Do you live life thinking about boundaries, that something might happen? Do you have a playbook in case something happens? Or are you like, well, I'm living life and I don't know what would happen? I mean, every day is the same, isn't it? Well, it might be, it might not be. In my case, dealing with hypermobility, I also say EDS. I'm still not sure which one it is, but I'm quite convinced it's actually EDS, which doesn't really matter. There's not much of a difference apparently. And I do all have the side effects that EDS has too. But it does influence what I do when it comes to daily life. And to give you an example, yesterday I actually already wanted to go live. So I was writing things down, thinking about, okay, what's going to be interesting. And then I realized the moment that I got up that I got this massive headache. It happens every now and then that over here the cavities, they actually start to hurt. So there's probably some inflammation of some sort going on. So I was like, okay, I need to sleep. But setting the intention already helped a lot. So today I was like, yay, I don't have that headache today. So I was like, okay, let's go live. Now here's the thing. I couldn't go live too late because I have to get up early in the afternoon tomorrow. And as some of you might know, I am a typical night owl. So I'm literally doing this during the night. Okay, having said so, today I want to talk to you about a playbook. And it has to do with unexpected situations. But the question, of course, is, are you aware that you might need it? Do you know your boundaries? And like I said at the beginning, did you even consider having a playbook? Well, just get pen and paper and let's start writing. I'm going to give you some ideas to think about. Now, a playbook is the big thing. So just like a regular book, it's got chapters, which are your scripts. And then, of course, within the scripts, you have to be more precise about what it is. So one script for me could be about my voice. So what to do if my voice isn't working and I do want to go live. Now, here's the thing. I already did some vocal exercises earlier. I'm not sure if that was the smartest thing to do, but I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And one of the other things that I really wanted to do was test this beauty. Unfortunately for me, the iPad needed charging. So it's either a little bit of static on the microphone, or it's more of a more dull sound using the microphone from the iPad. Anyway, it's charging right now. So I was like, I'm just going to go live. It's the way it is. It's progress over perfection, as Brendon Burchard, my role model, would say. So let me take you through some things that I have been dealing with, dealt with, still am dealing with. And well, I guess that first place is actually energy. So how are you with your energy? Well, I already told you I'm a night owl. Of course, that doesn't really work really well because most things are done during the day. And last Friday, I had a very, very, very long, well, it was not one conversation, it was multiple conversations. But if I put it all together, I think it was about 7 hours easily. So I had to help a client who switched from one GP to the other one, including the pharmacy. And she's depending on medication. And well, she has them delivered. So she expects the delivery to be there. I usually go to my GP like every 4 weeks. Then we talk about things. I ask for meds. Some of them are repeated already. Some of them are not. So by going there, I can ask her, oh, can you check when was the last time I got certain medications? And if I forget, well, I either go to the pharmacy and then I walk back over, or I just use the phone. So I have a pretty good idea on what's available and what's not. And last time I was there, which was earlier this week, she told me that there were some supply problems for one specific type of medication. So I said, well, just put it in the system, and then by the time it can be delivered again, then we'll be in time. So I think that was a new one for her. Instead of waiting until they have it again, I was like, well, just put it in the system. Well, in this case, we are talking about files. So my file prior to this century is gone. Everything from the first 29 years of my life is basically gone. And this, of course, was before everything was automated. And I moved a few times. And then I ended up with one GP who retired all of a sudden. And then it was end of story, end of file. Now, this one already has, well, she caught up. And I think that we figured out a lot of things in the last couple of decades. So it's kind of good. And I do like going there regularly, because that way she knows what's going on. And if I have questions or if I need referrals, she can give them to me. And we can also talk about the outcomes of certain things. And as you might know, and that actually has to do with the Playbook topic, things have been improving for me in the last couple of years. And considering that I'm way over 30 years old, which means that everything is going downhill, I'm actually kind of proud of making progress. So there it is. I've said it. Got two shoulders. And this is something that I encourage other people to do. So you might think, what on earth was she doing? Yes, I'm giving myself a compliment. Let your brain know that you are proud of yourself. So write it down somewhere. Let your brain know that you are proud of yourself. Because when we talk about the inner story, so your narrative, it's all about, what do you tell yourself? Are you worthwhile? Are you proud of yourself? Do you think, hey, I did good? Or are you always like, this could be better, that could be better? Yes, those kind of things. So going back to the client, so this is someone I guide on a daily or weekly basis, depends on how much time she needs and what's going on. So it's different from coaching, because I actually pick up the phone and she listens in so she can get things done. And in this case, she hadn't succeeded in getting her file transferred or her medication. So it seemed to be done at some point. So I helped her seeing what was possible. I also called about codes and other stuff. But quite honestly, it's a big mystery what's going on the back end when it comes to pharmacies and family doctors. So I've been calling with both GPs, the old one and the new one, both pharmacies, old one and new one. I learned something about files which are no longer used, which have been closed, but actually still do exist. And then you call them and then you hear, yes, those are basically empty files. Oh, interesting. The thing is that they don't move when you move, so they don't change the address, let's put it that way. So it's kind of, well, interesting, not sure how to call it. So she was like, again, and yes, there have been numerous times that I had to call the pharmacy on her behalf because I know about urgency, and especially when it's for someone else, I'm very good at getting the urgency across. It's a bit different when it comes to myself, but even for myself, I can do it. But for other people, yes, way easier. So I explained it, and well, they at some point realized that they need to do something, and they are working on it actually. So, well, on Friday night she said, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to have a weekend and then we'll continue on Monday. I said, okay, that can be done because she still has medication on Monday, but please, let's not wait too long because we don't want her to run out of medication. So for her, the playbook has to do with medication, for me too. But like I said, I have a different rhythm. I have a different way of dealing with it. But that could be one of the chapters of the playbook. So what else? Oh, just like me, boundaries. So I was talking about energy, right? So why did I start with the story about my client? Because she could only call between noon and 1 o'clock, which in fact wasn't true. So then we got to postpone things till 2 o'clock. Of course, we did talk about certain things between that time. So I had a lack of sleep. And I could tell I had a lack of sleep, but Friday is my busy day. So at some point it was like, okay, I'm going to play drums because I can only play drums in my house on Friday, which has to do with a permanent house guest who has problems because of the vibrations with me playing drums. But on Friday, I've got the house to myself, so that's yay. And then I'll be playing drums. So for me, going there and being able to play drums is a very big chapter in that book. So first of all, we have the energy. Do I have the energy to play drums? Just like, do I have the energy to go live? And if I've gone live, do I have the energy to get up in time the next day? Hence why I was like, okay, I can't go live too late this time around, because when I do, it's going to, well, I have to pay the consequences the day after. So let's not. So some things are about planning ahead of time and knowing what it is that you want to do, taking a look at what it is that you want to do, already gives your brain a signal like, hey, we need to pay attention. So when I realized I didn't know what time I was going to be at the speech therapist, or if I was going to get there this week instead of next week, I decided to send her a text message. And she responded, and indeed it was tomorrow, and it's going to be the early time of the possibilities. Okay, so when we talk about boundaries, we are basically talking about protecting yourself, protecting your time, protecting your energy, protecting the activities that you planned on doing. So you must have noticed that I used to go live on Friday night, hence Friday Night Live. I changed it to Weekend Night Live, which was the result of my neighbors on the other side of the building having parties. Now, it's not like they have a party every Friday, but unfortunately for me, only one of three actually tells me when they are going to have a party. And as a result, it can be really unexpected and just change the schedule. Basically, everything goes haywire. My mind goes haywire, and the schedule goes haywire too. So I decided to change this to Weekend Night Live. Like I said yesterday, I was like, okay, let's do it today early, so I am rested before going to the speech therapist. But like I said, I had a severe headache, so that wasn't working out really well. Instead, I was like, okay, what can I prepare? Let's do that part, and let's sleep in time, which I did as well. I guess that this part is something you might recognize. So when I was younger, of course, 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, sure, we can do that. Nowadays, it's an entirely different story, especially because I'm hypermobile, which means that my my brain actually needs to process what's happening with my joints, but also I never know when something is going to hurt or not. But it does bring me to the next chapter when it comes to boundaries. So when I go outside, and I'm going to ask you straight away, how often do you take a walk around the block? I don't know if you are a person who has a driver's license. If you have a bike over here in the Netherlands, that's kind of normal. But I also know a lot of people who are not using a bike at all. And they don't walk that much at all either. But since there is a lack of parking spots, it's kind of normal over here to experience. I'm sorry, I got distracted for a moment because I noticed there's going to be an update later tonight, and I was like, oh, what time is that going to be? Because what if it's going to happen while I am live talking to you? Now, in my case, I know that I have limitations when it comes to walking. I am very grateful that nowadays I can stand on 2 feet again. But because it has taken me so long to find a second surgeon who would do the second surgery on my ankle, combined with not living up to boundaries when it came to me, and hence not being able to heal as a result of it. And part had to do with my mom. So, and I do believe that a lot of people nowadays actually experience that same scenario. And my mom said back in the days, you're going to be so happy when I'm no longer around. And I said, no, Mom, I prefer having you around. And I still stand by that. But I will also say that I was not able to heal while she was still alive. The house was big for one, and there was a lot of walking involved. And well, since she was dealing with a disease which made her very suspicious, in one moment she was the sweetest one out there, and in the next moment it was, well, she wanted to, well, she wasn't very kind, let me put it that way. So it had something to do with Lewy body disease, probably. It's never been officially diagnosed, but that she wasn't herself anymore, that was a fact. And of course, people who get older are dealing with mobility issues. And back in the days, it was, of course, normal that children would help them out. Well, nowadays, we are in that same situation again. So for a long while, the generations that were, well, let's put it this way. At some point, the economy was that good that people could go to places where there was support. So they didn't need their children to support them. But nowadays, we don't have those places anymore because there's a lack of professionals, nurses, time, places, you name it. I see more people who are taking care of their parents while having a hard time themselves. I also see a lot of people who are happy when there's facility where they can visit their parents. My mom never wanted to go to such a facility. She was very adamant about it. And I'm very happy to say that until her last breath, she was at her own place. The downside was she died on her own. Had I been there, and yes, I knew something was going on, I just did not have the mind space for it at that moment. And I talked to my brother about it, same story. He reassured me not to worry, and well, I probably should have listened to my intuition. And I thought about that for a long time. And I realized that if I would have gone over, I would have called paramedics and she would have died in the hospital. So I have to assume that this was the best case scenario, even if it's only for myself. And I do know, still know, what was going on that day. So a lot of people were depending on me. So it was all in all, I guess it had to be this way. So boundaries. Nowadays, I know I can do certain things or not. Back then, I don't believe I had braces yet. And I used my crutches primarily, which of course had its effect on my wrist and my shoulders. And well, I tried to walk without the crutches, but when I had to walk a lot, especially when I had to be there very early in the morning, when my mom had fallen onto the ground, she couldn't get up, and the neighbors would hear her scream. And she was in luck, actually, now that I think about it, that she was living in this old house where basically, if you opened up the ceiling, you could see the floor of the neighbor living above you, because there was only wood and straw in between the floor and the ceiling. So they could hear her scream, basically. That's what it was about. Other things happened too, and On one occasion, I decided to remove myself from a certain situation so it wouldn't cost me any more energy, and basically being in this adrenaline state 24/7. So we don't want chronic stress. And when we talk about boundaries, we are basically talking about what do you do to give yourself a break. And let's face it, when it comes to working for an employer, of course, nowadays we have these vending machines. You can get coffee, tea, water, or whatever it is when you go to the kitchen. And back in the days, we had someone who would walk by behind a cart and they would come with coffee and tea. And you wouldn't stop working, you would just get your coffee and tea. So officially you should have your break like 15 minutes. So that would be like every 2 to 3 hours. And nowadays, sitting behind a screen, we know, of course, about the strain on our eyes. So we want to reduce that strain. But a lot of managers, they are like, come on, keep working, keep working. And the question, of course, is, but what is your brain like? If you're anything like me, then you need to take a break in order to have things process. And well, that can mean that maybe you want to play games and just think about nothing. Maybe it's about going outside and enjoying the fresh air. So hence why I asked you, how often do you walk around the block? Do you go outside? Or do you have like, well, there's that clock on the wall and it registers how many hours and minutes you actually have been inside. And I thought about that a lot. And I was like, yeah, well, maybe for a certain type of work that would work, but not when it comes to coming up with ideas, being on the phone, being service oriented. Then every once in a while you just want a break to recharge. And well, you can be in the building and not do anything at all. So I was a lot out of the building because I spent a lot of time with clients. So I was used to not making the hours on paper, but in reality I did make those hours, even also because I was traveling a lot, because I would be able to actually see and talk to the clients. And yes, I've had multiple burnouts because I would get up early in the morning. I would already be thinking about, in this case, the training I would be giving. Then I had to drive over there, usually a couple of hours. Then I had to entertain the entire bunch. During lunch, they would still be talking to me. And then I would drive back, come home late, still need to eat. And well, at some point, I fell asleep in front of the television. And I think that was the only time that I actually enjoyed the Baileys on the rocks. I know I have an allergy nowadays, I know, for alcohol, but at that moment it was just soothing. And actually, I have to be I call myself lucky that I quit doing it. I went to a therapist and she helped me with getting things back in order and also setting boundaries. Now, when I want to go for a walk or go places, it's always a bit of a challenge. If you've heard me more often, then you know that I need to know, how far are we going to walk? So, for instance, about a week ago, a little bit longer, there was this musical from the eldest of the children of a friend of mine. I go there on a weekly basis, so she wanted me there as well. So I was there, and afterwards, you could be in, well, basically on the schoolyard. There were some drinks, no, well, actually, there was beer. I want to say non-alcoholic, but some drinks were alcoholic as well. So there were some beverages, and there was something to snack. And otherwise, we were standing. And at some point, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to go home with my friend and her children, or am I going to do something else? So at some point, since she kept talking to someone else, I was like, okay, now I'm going to interrupt her. So I tapped her on her arm, then did it again until I actually had her attention. And then I said to the one she was talking to, please don't leave on my account. I just want to know what to expect. And when she said, well, we're going home and I need to get them into bed early, then I said, okay, then I'm going to leave now. And please continue on the conversation. Now, I know that it might be considered rude and not done, but I had been standing there for quite a while. I had not brought my braces, I think. And the days after, I actually experienced the results of it. And my friend usually takes into consideration that I cannot stand for a long time and I cannot walk for a long time. So this was actually the opposite. She didn't realize it. I didn't realize it either. But at some point, I had to speak up. So when we talk about boundaries, it is about speaking up. And in your playbook, you should know when the time comes that you are going to speak up. Now, you probably know that nowadays we have Jumping Bunny. Jumping Bunny represents my inner kid. She jumps, hence Jumping Bunny, and she likes to box as well. And then she lets me know I am not happy with what's happening. So, hence the role of Jumping Bunny. So, what do you have when it comes to a warning system? I mean, you can use your watch. You can put an alarm on your phone. What is the thing that you react to? Now, you might have noticed that I have been sipping some water. Actually, it's water with medication in there. I've got 3 types of medication which are related to the hypermobility and the mast cell disease. So, and it helps. Yeah. My voice is actually the result of the mast cell disease. So when it comes to heartburn or silent reflux, well, that sort of has had its impact. Well, not sort of. It has had its impact on my vocal cords, so they can't close. And like I said, there are nodules on there. And now I go to the speech therapist to learn how to manage the quality of my voice, I guess, and what to do when certain things do not work at all. So going back to the walking, so depending on what I'm wearing, there's something underneath the brace or there's not. The easiest thing for me is to go by car, preferably my own car, because everything is in my own car. So recently someone picked me up, and well, she was kind of similar like me when it came to control. So she wanted to go with her car. Well, okay, fine by me, but it did require me to take some extra stuff with me, which is normally in my car. It also means that when I go by bike, since I don't use my braces on the bike, that I also need to be able to have access to those braces. So they go with me on what apparently is called panniers. Apparently it's called, but panniers is what it's called in French, if we use the official pronunciation. So those are basically the bags on the back of the bike. And well, so I put my braces in there in case I was or am going to use my crutches, which I haven't done for a long time. I actually have Velcro on my steering wheel, the handlebar. Steering wheel doesn't sound right. You know, those are those words that I never really thought about. But I've got hockey clamps on each side of the front wheel. So there are two. And I click my crutches in there, and then I attach them to the handlebar with Velcro. I've got two pairs. One pair is in my car, one pair is near my bike. But those are things that I need to consider. And nowadays, I also need to consider when I'm going to eat, and especially what I'm going to eat. And in this case, when I'm going to go live and talk a lot. I'm not aware, but most of the things that I do, unless I'm on the phone, is writing a lot. So, because I also talk a lot when it comes with Brendan Burchard, as in Brendan AI or Google AI, which is not AI from Google, but from several other companies, but you see it on the Google platform. Then, of course, there are other AIs from Transcriptor, just to name a few. And for me, it's almost easier to write down my thoughts and go back and forth with an AI than it is to actually talk to actual human beings. But then again, I do like to see human beings and just really get out there and just, you know, have that break every once in a while. So when I get to talk a lot, I know that I run a risk of the mast cells getting stressed out, and hence why I have to take certain medication prior, especially when I go to the speech therapist. I also know that doing this the day before I go to the speech therapist might actually result in me not being able to use the full range of my vocal cords. Now, I could make a description, but I'm not going to. But let's put it this way, you have to, depending on the technique, you use different parts of your vocal cords. Then, of course, the question is, am I going to do it standing or sitting? For me, standing, I never know how long I can stand. And usually I don't bring my braces when I go up there because, well, it's basically straight from the car and into the building. If I would be parked far away, then yes, I would be wearing my braces. But normally I don't. So at some point I have to tell her, remember, boundaries, I need to sit down. So we figured something out. It's like a balancing stool, I guess you can call it. So it helps with sitting down, but also still being able to move my back and regulate my breathing technique. And the hardest thing actually is to really think about before I do something, okay, I need to inhale first, and then I can do things while exhaling. I'm not going to say I do this during my talk to you, during my life, because I'm not there yet, but at some point I'll probably learn that too. They've tried to teach me to make these little tweaks with the stomach. So basically, I pull the stomach in order to produce sound. It's it's not easy to do, but well, sometimes you need to do what you need to do, right? So talking about this, during the day, whether it has to do with food or with energy or the activity that is taking place, I need to figure out what can I do and when can I do it. So one of the things that I've learned is when I haven't had enough sleep, especially when dealing with pain, which can be the result of something I did a few days earlier, I need my rest, because otherwise it will have its effect, because I will know that I'm still tired, and that makes it hard to concentrate. And well, it's like there's this constant dizziness going on in my mind. And at some point when I'm really depleted, then I can notice that basically my eyes are turning to the back of my head. And if it's really bad, then I actually am going into this state where I'm sort of dreaming, but I'm also aware that I'm still here and so not asleep. And then we have two realities that just go and, they try to mix. And of course, I've had it a few times actually when I was talking to you out there. And I was like, I need to stop talking now, because I'm going to say something which is utter nonsense, because my brain would take me to something totally different. So now I'm aware that most of you are not in a position where I am. And what I mean is dealing with physical challenges. But I do believe that a number of you might actually be dealing with mental challenges, or, well, what I mean is that it's important to take that break and to process things. And when I said, okay, it's time to write things down, have you thought about that already? So when do you take your breaks, and does it help you? I mean, do you commute to and from work? And if so, what are you noticing? Now, I am aware that nowadays we work from home a lot. But then, of course, we still have that same question. Do you still go around the block? Do you go outside? How about lunch? The good thing about going to an office is there are regular times that you are going to have lunch, that you're going to do certain things. But the question, of course, is what do you do when you work from home? And especially when you have children, how does that work out for you? Because, well, I guess it's true what Oprah once said. Well, she didn't say it once, she said it multiple times, that being a stay-at-home mom or dad is actually a full-time job as well. It never ends, after work. If you're going to office building, afterwards it's done. but you can turn off your children unless they're asleep, and even then. So think about these things, about what you do in order to know what your limits are and how you need to recharge. Now, like I said, for me, it already starts with going around the block or doing this live and talking to you. So I already need to prepare for these things. When I go out to dinner, I make sure that I have this list and I need to adjust it. That's something I just remembered. So when I have dinner, they are actually aware of what I can eat and what I cannot eat, because all these things have an effect on my blood pressure, my skin, and yes, the mast cells basically. So, and the question, of course, is what influences you, and how do you notice that things have their effect on you? Maybe you are someone who would like to go to the gym, but you don't feel up for it because you don't have enough energy. Maybe it's about cooking. Maybe you want to cook, but you don't feel the energy or you don't have the time to actually go do it. So, those are things that you want to think about. When I talked about gaming, we can also think about the old fashioned board games. But I discovered something recently, and it's called Locus, which is like a game of Tetris, but then on paper and with cards. And here's the thing, I have this hyper focus once I get going, and I just keep going on and on and on and on. And then I forget to take a break. So, what is it for you? Do you experience hyper focus, or is it at some point you're just done with the day? And how about if you were to stay and recognize, so stay within certain boundaries or limitations because you recognize them, and you can be in time so you can do other things as well? Have you ever thought about that? So, is this about certain things you need to plan? Is it about recognizing certain signals, certain signs? What is it that tells you, okay, now I need to take a break, or if I'm going to have an appointment, it's going to be from this time to the other. So this is my window that I have available. And what do you do if other people constantly go on like an hour longer? And as a result, you go home later or you do other things later. So, those are just a few things that I wanted to talk about, because when you want to live life to the fullest, that requires you to have energy. So, how to stay within your boundaries? How do you recognize them? What are the signals? And can you create a playbook? Start with something. Write something down that is really important to you, and have a backup plan. Like for me, I've got everything in my backpack. So when I need to charge my phone or my iPad, I can do so. I have my medication in there. I also have what we call various layers of clothing in there. So when you're dealing with the whole hypermobility, then often change in temperature can have a huge effect on how you feel. So I make sure that I can put things on and I can take things off as well, depending on where I am. So basically, it's starting with a t-shirt and then adding certain layers. But yes, I'm prepared. It's a huge backpack, but it works. So when it comes to my car, there are my braces in there. There's a pair of crutches in there. There are cooling bags in there too for when I do grocery shopping. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in my car. When you look at my bike, it's set up in a way that I can take my groceries with me, my braces with me, but also my crutches. So what is it that you should think about? Well, I have to update that list. That's what I talked about. So I can have dinner tomorrow without having to worry. So here's the funny thing. Well, I don't know if it's funny. I consider it funny. When you look at my mind, what's on the paper is what I cannot handle. So call it an intolerance, call it an allergy. And the result is that my esophagus starts to cramp and then I cannot swallow. Or the acid reflux comes up, which has its effect on my vocal cords. Everything has its own way of reacting in my body. But then comes the question, do I like something or not? Well, I eat bananas, but I don't like banana flavor. So please don't give me banana flavor. I like chocolate flavor, but I don't like chocolate itself. When it comes to covering things in chocolate, please don't. I don't want it. And as a result, I need to adjust the list and put things on there that I basically don't like. And in my mind, it was like, but this is an allergy list. And now I'm going to write things down that I don't like. But they need to know. And for them, there is no difference. For me, there is, but for them, there isn't. And those are things too, when it comes to your playbook. What do you need to take into consideration? I'm thinking about one more thing. So, what I've noticed when it comes to my friends is when it comes to having dinner, one will call me, "Are you in the area?" No, it takes me like half an hour or 45 minutes to get there. Oh, well, I want to eat now. Bye. Okay. So it's not working out. Another one is like, okay, yes, I would like to have dinner, but no, I don't want it too late. So that's a whole different story. I'm more like, okay, when I want to eat, I want to eat. And depending on where I am, I'll either have something with me in my backpack, especially when I'm driving, but sometimes I also like to go to a restaurant or a terrace and just, sit down, do some work and eat. So it's enjoying the food, really enjoying the food and also what's going on around me. And then I have my inspiration and then I go on again. So what is it for you? What is it that you need to take into consideration? What's important to you? And do you know why it's important to you? And what you could do in order to stay within those boundaries so you feel energized in the most optimal way. Well, if you're like, well, first of all, I don't know because I don't know myself. Or more importantly, maybe you do know, but you don't dare to speak up. Then remember, I've got the Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge. Join that challenge. And you got access to each day for 3 days. And just think about how you can express yourself and what it is that you would like to tell yourself and what you would like to tell your brain, because your brain knows what you're doing. If you're keeping what you promised to do, or if you're not sticking to that at all. So if I were not going to go live, then my brain knows and it says, okay, I cannot count on you, basically. So my brain won't believe me anymore. So that's one of the reasons why on a daily basis I do talk and work on things that need to be done, even if it's just a reminder, like, okay, this is what's important. And then I might think about why I'm doing it or not. But there isn't a day that goes by that I do not think about, well, there are some things that are really important to me. And they have to do with speaking up with perspective and also helping others get perspective again. So, since that's my purpose, I do want to do something with that. But I can say a lot, but it all depends on what's getting out there. And then we get back to boundaries, limitations, and energy. So let me know what it is that you are working on or what you would like to do. And that way we can get to inspire other people, because I could get into that. And again, remember the Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge. I talk to you again next week. Take good care of yourself. Don't overdo it. And especially have fun doing whatever it is that you are doing.